Good evening. I call us out all now to a meditative thought just prior to the Pledge of Allegiance. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This meeting is held in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. The news media has been notified, and a copy of the agenda has been made available to the public. The meeting is open to the public, and the public is welcome to attend in person. All persons wishing to attend the meeting by virtual means may do so via YouTube, Sumter School District Board meeting, and Sumter School District's Facebook page. The vision for this district is Sumter School District is committed to educating, empowering, and enriching the lives of all students to reach their full potential. Our mission: Sumter School District is committed to providing a safe, nurturing, and high-quality educational environment that supports diversity and equips students for local and global success. Tonight we have with us Esquire Bonnie S. Disney, Area 9, our Vice Chair, Sean T. Reagan, Area 5, our Clerk, Sherry Smith, White, Area 7, Parliamentarian, Daniel Palumbo, Area 1, Tara Kaiser Johnson, Area 4, Matthew Mack McLeod, Area 6, Jeff Zell, Area 8, Denise Jones, Shore Air Force Base representative. We are expected to be joined later by Brittany English of Area 2. Dr. William T. Wright, Jr. serves as our superintendent, and Ms. Shante Scott serves as the administrative manager to the superintendent and to the Board of Trustees. I'm Ralph W. Kenny, and I represent Area 6, and I serve as chairman. I'd like to declare this meeting open for business. And as I do that, there are two things that I'd like to make mention of before I call for the adoption of the agenda.
One is we have this wonderful, beautiful card of thank you from Michael and Sherry White. It's the Sumter School District Board of Trustees, Dr. Wright and Ms. Scott. Thank you for the lovely personalized plaque and generous gift card you sent for our wedding. It was very thoughtful, and we will treasure it always with great affection. Mike and Sherry. We're delighted to have you back. At church we sing a new name in glory, but look like you got a new name down here. Congratulations to you. Also, you will, board members, you will find at your desk an article from the paper referencing broadband. I was excited to pass that to you just in case you did not see it in the paper, because it's quite consistent with our shared vision. It's one of our planks, and the office, state office of broadband has awarded to Farmers Telephone $12 million plus to expand broadband in our area, which is significant. And it includes nearly 1,000 new installations at structures. So it means that hopefully many more of our students and our teachers will have available at their home broadband services. We are moving in the right direction, and it does appear that in the first 100 days we're going to get at least 3 of those items done. We'll talk about them at another time. At our next meeting, I hope to have ready a resolution that will conclude our effort on broadband, as well as letters to the state and to Farmers Telephone for this initiative. All right? With that in mind, the agenda is before you for your approval.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add a presentation by the American Legion prior to entering into executive session.
Mr. Chair, I second that motion.
Motion is supported. Is there any discussion? Before we do it, let me acknowledge that Ms. English is now present. Thank you very much. All those in favor will just indicate with a show of hands. Those who oppose, same sign. Thank you so very much. And at this time, I'm going to call on representatives of the American Legion to come forth to make a special presentation.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jack Lonergan. I'm the commander of American Legion Post 175 that represents Dalzell and Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina. I'm also the 4th vice commander for the Department of South Carolina that represents the entire state. Each year, the American Legion has an award that they give out to the Teacher of the Year. Every post recommends one particular teacher, and their package gets sent forward to our department headquarters. This year, our post Educator of the Year for 2023 is Denise Christmas Robinson from Willow Drive Elementary School. Please come forward. Ms. Robinson requesting one for our post, and her package was sent to the Department of South Carolina for evaluation against 161 other posts in the state. She was selected by the Department of South Carolina to represent the Department of South Carolina as the Teacher of the Year for the state. Her package is now being forwarded up to our national headquarters, where the package is going to be represented against 55 other departments throughout the country, and we'll know by this summer whether or not she gets awarded for that. But the award for the Department of South Carolina is going to be given on May 19th, if I'm not mistaken, at our department convention. Thank you very much. Thank you, Reverend.
Sir, it's such a pleasure to have you and members of the Legion with us tonight.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Item 3, the executive session.
Mr. Chairman, I move to make a motion to enter an executive session for discussion of individual student matters, transfer in and out district, discussion of superintendent's organization chart, the monthly personnel report, appointment compensation, promotion, demotion, discipline, termination, and release of an employee, and personnel operations.
You've heard the motion, and it's second that we enter into executive session for discussion of individual student matters, transfer in, out of district, discussion of the superintendent's organizational chart, the monthly personnel report, appointment, compensation, promotion, demotion, discipline, termination, and/or release of an employee, and personnel operations. If there is no discussion, we will vote. I thought someone seconded it.
I will second it.
Oh, it is supported. Mrs. Okay. We'll vote electronically. Mine didn't pop up. There we go. We have a unanimous vote. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to try and limit this session to 1 hour. We'll see you there. Your telephones, please silence them. Number 5, item 5, board communications. Are there any announcements? Announcements? Okay. Committee reports and recommendations?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to report that we had a meeting of the Policy Committee this week, and we reviewed several policies. We were getting our feet wet, getting started, and we will have those to go before the board at our next meeting. They will be on the agenda.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other?
Mr. Chair, I just want to in line with Ms. White, we had our initial ad hoc committee on transportation meeting last Friday. It was more of an introductory. I think it went very well. We don't have anything to present to you now, but we will in the very near future.
Okay,
And Mr. Chair, the Fine Arts Committee also met, and we did go through a SWOT analysis, the strengths and the weaknesses of that, but nothing formal to report at this time.
okay. Thank you so very much. Any other committee reports?
Mr. Chair, the Curriculum Committee will meet April the 6th.
Okay,
And Mr. Chair, the Finance Committee will be meeting April the 4th.
okay, thank you. Item 6, Superintendent's Report. Mr. Superintendent?
Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Trustees, and the audience, we have several items tonight. We're going to begin by getting an update on the salary study. Dr. John Coombs, if you'll come forth at this time. He is our Chief Human Resources Officer to present our guests.
All right, good evening, Mr. Chair and gentlemen and ladies of the School Board of Trustees. Thank you for allowing us to come in. I have Dr. Russell Gamble. He is going to present and kind of bring you up to date in reference to where our salary study is now. He is with Management Advisory Group, who is actually conducting our study. So, Dr. Campbell.
Thank you. Good evening, board members, Mr. Wright, Dr. Wright, excuse me. I won't take a great deal of time tonight. What I want to do is just give you an overview of where we are with the process, the next steps, and anticipation of when we'll have the initial reports of the study. With respect to what we've done up to this point, we've done a couple of things. We've requested numerous pieces of information from the district. We've gotten a file with all the employee data, every employee by name, current salary, job title, promotion date, hire dates. We've also held some meetings with the employees to explain the process and approach of how we do these type of studies. We've also asked the employees that are non-teachers to actually complete a formal job questionnaire that was hosted on our website that asked them various pieces of information or questions with respect to the different aspects of their positions within the district. And then thirdly, we've conducted a market survey locally and regionally of other districts to collect salary and wage information for comparable positions. And so this is really two studies within one. For the teacher part of the process, we do not ask the teachers to complete a job questionnaire. We will develop the teacher schedule strictly indexed to the local and regional market based on education level and years of experience. For the non-teaching positions, it's a little more involved. The first step in that process is to get those job questionnaires back that the employees completed. We will conduct a formal evaluation or job analysis on those questionnaires based on the criteria that we employ. And we will set a structure that identifies or ranks the jobs based on the duties, responsibilities, and the qualifications needed to hold those positions that are non-teaching positions. This process is predicated on two things. First and foremost, it's a statistical process. We use some patented salary survey software that we've designed exclusively to develop compensation systems. And so once we're done, we'll be able to determine where the district falls within the marketplace currently and what it's going to take to get the district to a better competitive position with respect to teachers and non-teachers. Generally speaking, as a rule of thumb, if you can get the organization under study at least to the 70th percentile, historical data shows that the district should be able to compete across the board for positions in and outside the classroom. And so our experience in South Carolina is pretty broad. Currently, we're working for Dorchester 2. We've completed a study recently for Colleton School District down in Colleton County. We're also working with Lexington 2, Richland 2, and Richland 1. And on a national basis, we're working for Atlanta Public Schools, Houston Public Schools, Chesapeake Schools in Virginia. So we are a full-service human resources consulting firm. About a third of our client base are local school districts. I personally have been a former HR director, an assistant city manager, and I've done about 200 plus of these type of studies. My claim to fame is I've never had one that wasn't implemented, and so my streak won't end here, I assure you. So the next step is for us to take all the data that we've collected and extrapolate that data and start building the model in the program to generate the new salary scales for the teachers as well as for the non-teaching positions, calculate the cost to implement the two different salary scales, and then create some different options for the district to consider in terms of implementation. When we go into these type of studies, the expectation is that the district will implement the study the next fiscal year. However, we do have situations where some organizations, because they lag the market by such a degree, cannot bite off the entire cost of implementing the study in the very next fiscal year. So the study has to be phased in maybe over 2 years. And so can't say where we are yet because we're still going through the data. But based on where we are now, I anticipate having the initial report April 17th. I will meet initially with Dr. Wright and the HR staff to review the initial findings. And then shortly thereafter, based on an invitation from Dr. Wright, I will come back and meet with the board and prepare a more detailed presentation complete with recommendations and findings. If you have any general questions about the nature of what we do, I'll be happy to answer those tonight. But if you really want to get into the nuts and bolts of the process and findings and recommendations, I ask that you hold on to those questions until I come back within the next couple of weeks, and I will have all the detail you could possibly ever want to know about how salary studies are developed and where the district fits within the current market for teachers and non-teaching positions.
Sir, just a quick question. Typically, after you, do you follow up, follow through, reach back into the schools that you help with this salary issue? Have you seen positive results out of this? I mean, what sort of what sort of expectations should we get out of this from your standpoint?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, salary or compensation alone is not the only factor one considers when coming to work for an organization or staying with an organization. I've done a number of what we call quality of work-life studies, which looks at the work environment. And based on Maslow's theory of hierarchical needs, pay always falls within the top three, but it's not always number one. Sometimes job security, advancement opportunity, work environment will follow number one. The other thing is salary increases are a short-term infusion with respect to morale. If we doled out salary increases July 1, probably around September or October, those folks that got increased in July would probably want another increase. And so what I will say is this study will validate for those that have felt for some time that they were underpaid, the position that they're in, they've been underpaid. This study will validate whether or not that is true, and it will put the district in a better position to make informed compensation decisions, not just in terms of new hires, but also with respect to promotions, transfers, and demotions. And we will also write policies that govern salary administration and write new position descriptions as well for the district.
And that will be included in this salary study, correct?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair, Doctor, and this kind of goes along with what you're about to say. Will it also give us the results of, say, a school, we have 5 English teachers, and will it come up with the results of saying, really, you need 6 at that school?
That is something that we do, but according to the request for proposal that we responded to, it was strictly focused on compensation. But if the district desires us to look at a staffing assessment, we certainly can do that. We can amend the current contract if Dr. Wright gives us that direction.
Mr. Chair, originally that's what I was told that that study was gonna have the staffing to show what type of positions, different, schools they need at those, at the different schools. So I highly suggest we should have had that originally in the salary study.
I would suggest, Mr. Palumbo, that we refer that to the superintendent, let the superintendent coordinate with the specialist, okay?
So let me speak to that really quickly. Staffing allocations for teaching positions are determined by class size and by the state of South Carolina. So those figures are not necessarily flexible in terms of that. This study will include positions, district office positions, and right sizing the district in terms of that and what is and is not permissible. But when we're talking about classroom teaching positions themselves, or how many English teachers are in one building, those are pretty much controlled by class size allotments for the state. So it's kind of two different things there. But we'll look at it. I mean, if we need to do more, we'll do more. It's just going to cost more. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just a point of clarification. You mentioned April 17th as the predicted date for your initial report. Is that to Dr. Kumis or is that to us?
That's to Dr. Wright and
Dr. Wright.
John.
Okay.
And then once I get their initial reaction after a couple of days, and then based on direction from Dr. Wright, I'll come back and have a formal presentation to the board.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, sir.
Look forward to coming back.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now we will proceed to items 6.2 and 6.3. I will ask our Executive Director of Academics, Dr. Jada McLeod, to come forth and introduce the presenters.
Good evening, Chair Canty, Vice Chair, Ms. Disney, board, members of the Board of Trustees. Tonight, we are very excited to be able to share our progress with our STEM and cybersecurity bus. Would like to call forward Dr. David Laws, Mr. Leroy Staggerwalt, and Mr. Richard Phillips. They have been instrumental in this work over the past year, and it's very exciting what we're going to be able to share with the students very soon.
Good evening, Board of Trustees, Chairman Canty, Superintendent Wright. We have a presentation behind you. You may have it in front of you also. But we want to provide you with an update on our innovation initiatives. So we are very fortunate to have joined with some very dedicated airmen from Shaw Air Force Base to start the process of our cybersecurity bus. She's pulling it up so for the audience. So here in Sumter School District, we are soaring with innovation. The team here to my left and right is Mr. Richard Phillips, Coordinator of Science, STEM, and Social Studies, Fine Art, PE, Health, and Mr. Leroy Stagward, our STEM Innovation Specialist, will be the gentleman that will be manning our STEM Explorer. A quote from Theodore Levitt: "Creativity is thinking up new things. Innovation is doing new things." Our objective this afternoon, or this evening, is we want to provide the Board of Trustees with an update of our cybersecurity mobile unit and our Pilgrim's Pride STEM Explorer.
First, we're going to take a review or update for our cybersecurity mobile unit. We're going to be using the abbreviation CMU, so if you hear me say CMU, we're talking about our cybersecurity mobile unit. It is the first of its kind in the state. We do not have any other districts that have that has a cybersecurity mobile unit, and we have actually have several districts want to examine our progress in creating our first mobile unit. We took a district, thanks to Mr. Myers in the district, we took a district activity bus, and we had the team from Shaw Air Force Base, and they went through, and you're going to see in some of the photos, and they actually stripped it all out, took all the seats out, totally gutted it, and we redid this unit to be a state-of-the-art cybersecurity mobile unit. This unit is being funded by Sumter School District from our district funds as well as CTE funds and donations from Sumter Cyber Innovation Council. The cybersecurity mobile unit will be staffed with a cyber education teacher, so it's not just going to be sitting on the yard. It's going to be active, it's scheduled. Mr. Staggerwaltz have a STEM curriculum that he's developed that he will be using to present at all K through 12 schools. And I said K through 12, and one of the pre-K teachers said, "What about pre-K?" Pre-K through 12. So we make sure we include all of our students. It will serve also as an ambassador for the district at festivals, extracurricular events, and teacher recruiting initiatives. It's going to be one of the symbols that we're going to have in the community as well as across our region. Next, you're going to see a couple of pictures. We're going to not spend a lot of time, but I want to kind of explain. This is what the bus originally looked like. The seats inside and bus was in good shape, but as you go to the next slide, you can see that we have our team from Shaw, from the Cybersecurity Initiative. They took out all the seats, gutted everything, scripted it all out. To the next slide. And then we covered all the windows. When we're doing cybersecurity, we don't need any windows. It's that concepts of being totally in dark and having a state-of-the-art unit. So in order for us to model, we actually had to go to the federal government level to model creating a cybersecurity mobile unit. Then the next slide, you see they're actually running all the cables. The wire is totally rewired for computer stations, electrical, everything is involved. Then, in order to control the temperature on the inside, we insulated the walls. We covered all the windows. That's what you see on the right side. The windows are all covered. The airmen at Shaw did an outstanding job, led by Lieutenant Lawandowski. Did I say that right? Yeah. Then next photo, you see we've covered the wall with nice paneling. We have nice flooring also on the floor. In the next slide, and we updated the air conditioning system. So that is pretty much this update we want to share at this moment with the cybersecurity. We're going to have a big reveal we're going to talk about later, but we're going to now shift to the Pilgrim's Mobile STEM Explorer. The Pilgrim's Mobile STEM Explorer is a state-of-the-art RV, mobile classroom. We use funds from Pilgrim's Pride, a donation that Pilgrim's Pride provided to us. The Sumter Education Foundation, BD, and CARES Fund to fund this project. It was a huge project, and we're looking forward to celebrating the results. The production day update is 90% complete. They're actually in the process of now scheduling the wrap. The wrap is the exterior design. You're going to see a design tonight, but it's not our design. But you'll get a conceptual idea of what it's going to look like. So it is scheduled to be completed by April 14th, and we're meeting tomorrow to talk about how we want to make the big reveal to the community as well as to the school board and the community. So this is a conceptual photo of what it looks like. Functionally, it's the same with the slide-out exterior classroom, TV. That's the right side of the RV.
And then this is the next photo is the left side. It slides out also, so it makes a big space of a classroom on the inside in the middle. And it also has an awning that goes out so you can have exterior activities. This is the right side again. That shows you have place for 2 awnings. We have a lift for accessibility for anyone who is immobile. We will have the lift that the students can actually lift up their wheelchair. We have monitors on both sides, and the next photo will show the lift. That's what the lifts look like. On the inside, our concept was a little different. The team, Mr. Richards, myself, and Mr. Staggerwalt, we went to Ohio, and also Ms. Shelley Galloway, and we actually provided detailed input on how we want the bus to be customized. We were able to visit the production facility and lay out and gave feedback on how we want the inside design. So our bus is going to be a little bit modified from these photos, but this gives you a conceptual idea. We have Chromebooks that will be purchased that will be mounted on the inside, available for the students at Edna Station. The RV will be equipped with mobile Wi-Fi, so in rural communities, no matter where we go, it'll be accessible to the instructions we'll be providing from the mobile unit. We go on through to the next photos, and this is just a conceptual idea of what it would look like. Next photo will also, next one, have a sink available for science projects with STEM. And next photo, even though the coffee cup or mug is there, we don't know about that, but nevertheless, it'll have that availability. We might need a coffee break for Mr. Staggerwalt. And this is the rear of the RV. We did some, next photo, some modifications to the rear to have another section for classroom. And underneath the benches, next photo, we have the next one. We did the graphics for the floor also. We kind of changed it up a little bit. And we have storage underneath those units. All right, needs assessment. Why are we doing all of this? Post-pandemic, we were able to conduct a needs assessment. We able to analyze data, and we noticed that students have demonstrated decreased performance in math, science, and reading. And there are some inequity in STEM access, especially with our elementary students and students who may not have the larger schools, school size or population. So we wanted to be able to provide equity opportunity for all students, and having the mobile unit provide the same rigorous instruction to all students was one of our key goals. And we needed to increase student learning. So the purpose of both the Cyber Security Mobile Unit and the Pilgrim's Pride Mobile STEM Explorer is to re-engage students through hands-on learning, to increase students' problem solving and critical thinking skills, and to increase students' academic stamina. So some students have gotten a little bit relaxed and they give up a little bit too easy with challenging tasks. We want to rebuild that stamina through hands-on experience. And we want to build the foundation for students to be college and career ready. So what our desire is, we know that we didn't share the current pictures, and I know some of you are probably ready to see those, but we want to have a big reveal. We want to have the big wow moment where we present both units to the board as well as the community. And so we are working on that discussion tomorrow, and we will have the wraps done. We want to have the big wow factor so you can actually walk on it. You can experience the classroom before we actually put it into production. So we're hoping to have that sometime in May. We just got to work out the logistics of having both units hid well. We're going to do our big reveal and present it to you. So, with that being said, we are ready to soar, and we can answer any questions the team may have, the board may have.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I have a question. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Certainly, I think that this is a great, great idea. I thought that last year when you all shared this information with the board, I think in June. However, just for clarification, Dr. Laws, you're saying that there are two different types of buses, correct? There's a STEM bus and then there's a RV mobile classroom. Okay, so the STEM bus is set to be completed April 24th.
Both are scheduled to be completed by April 24th.
Both of them?
Yes.
Okay. And then that last date that was presented to the board just now, that was May the 4th.
Well, we just put a TBD, I don't think a date was on it, but we want to have a reveal in May, but we hadn't set a time because we got to work out the logistics of it.
Okay.
So we want to have both presented at the same time. They both will be completely finished.
Okay, to be used for the next academic
Yes, sir.
school year,
Well, actually, it's going to be used during the summer.
during the summer.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
They already scheduled out these two gentlemen. We have not yet hired a person for the cybersecurity mobile unit, but Mr. Stagwalt will be the manager of the STEM Mobile Explorer.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
My question is, should we expect to see at least one, if not both of these mobile units throughout the district, no matter what area of the district?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Stagwalt can speak to it. He already have demand all across all 15 elementary schools, all the middle schools, the high school. It is in high demand. Even some of our neighboring districts want us to visit, possibly, his schedule full, to visit with Clarendon as well as Kershaw and Lee.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
remind me again, who will be the permanent instructors in this?
The permanent instructor for the STEM Mobile Explorer will be Mr. Stagwell. We have not yet hired someone for the cybersecurity mobile unit.
Mr. Stagwell, will you, when you go to a school, will you ask for example, if there's a science teacher that's going to be using it, will that become your assistant? Will that person become your assistant?
Yes, ma'am. So the way that the schedule will be created is when we go to each individual school, whichever classroom, all the classes will have the opportunity to come out to the STEM RV, and the teachers are expected to come to be the assistant during whatever hands-on lesson we're doing it that day.
Yeah. Then I suppose then there's going to be some type of training for those teachers so they become familiar with what's inside?
Yes, ma'am. We do, at the beginning of the school year, plan to allow each one of the teachers in the district to go through. However, most of the lessons that we're doing are using the STEM engineering design process, which we hope to also have a PD on. And we're providing classroom extension lessons for the teachers to do in their classrooms. That way, when the STEM RV is not there, they still have that hands-on experience. So when they come to the RV, they'll already be familiar with the vernacular, and the students will already have an understanding of what's expected.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair, just a couple questions.
Yes.
So first, I think it's spectacular. It's meeting children where they're at, literally. And of course, we know some schools need a bigger boost than others. And so that leads to my first question, because I think as this board in this district, our student outcome, student achievement needs to be our primary focus in everything that we do. That said, can you give us just kind of a taste of your schedule, where you're going to be, how long you're going to be there? Does these buses, do they facilitate full class sizes? How does that look?
So it will facilitate full classes. Mr. Stagwell has already submitted to me a draft of what his schedule is going to be, and I'm going to let him speak to his.
Yeah, so the tentative schedule has us going based upon the current numbers for this school year. I pulled the information from Power School for each school to know how many classes each grade level had at each school and design the schedule around that. We've also got a flex week that's designed in there. So currently we are out to April, visiting all elementary schools and middle schools, and the flex days are designed so that the lower achieving schools will have extra time to either have the Star Lab at their location or have a revisit from the RV, as well as I've mentioned already, the classroom extension lessons, which we call cells, are going to be provided one per month for each grade level that are aligned to the next generation science standards, increasing critical thinking and re-engaging students in STEM process.
Chair, if I may, to expound on the scheduling, to make sure that there's an equitable distribution of the resources, especially to the rural areas. There won't be any, it's not going to be lopsided. Everybody's going to have equal opportunity and access to it. And you did mention that as it progresses, those who need more help, there can be a flex week. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Right. Let's
Anyone
keep,
else on this side?
Real quick, Iris Festival, you guys are gonna be there? Okay.
well, we were invited to be there, but then once I gave them the prerequisite amount of space that we would need, they determined that they could not meet that requirement. The back, if you know that area, that backside of on the backside of that little pond, that space is not available for Iris Festival this year because of some renovations and things that are going on. So there's less space this year. Now, we will be there. The mobile units will not, but we will be there to provide, interactive STEM activities as we did last year. And if I could make one point about the cyber mobile unit and the STEM mobile unit. These units are designed to meet students' needs. Now, we are data-driven, so we will align what we do on these units with the needs as determined by the data that we get from assessments and also from past assessments, our SC Ready Science, formerly SC Pass Science. So we know the areas where our students have the greatest difficulty. We know those lower performing areas. So we will use these units to target those areas. Now the classroom teacher will become the partner, become Mr. Staggerwalt's partner. It's not, this is not a Mr. Staggerwalt come and answer all your problems. This is a partnership. So to that end, Mr. Staggerwalt will partner in the planning process with the classroom teachers as well. So this is a collaborative effort from beginning to end based on student needs.
Okay. Gentlemen, on behalf of this board, I want to express our appreciation for the presentation tonight. We're extremely excited about it. Innovative leadership. That's taken us to a new level. And hopefully, as we soar, our students will soar. They will benefit from this kind of initiative, and it will take our district to a new level. Thank you so very much for all that you're doing. And obviously, there's a whole lot of work behind the scene. Continue, and we're grateful.
Thank
Mr. Superintendent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Trustees. I, too, am very excited about these two venues for learning. This is all about the work that we've been talking a lot about lately about blended learning. So this is certainly another opportunity, exciting opportunity for our students. At this time, we'll go to item 6.3, which is the Office of Academics approval of textbook adoption for Biology 1 CP, Biology 1 Honors, Biology 1 AP, Biology 2 CP for school year 23-24. Dr. McLeod.
Yes, thank you. Since this falls under Mr. Phillips' area of supervision and he worked directly with the teachers in the review process, I'm going to let him move forward.
Thank you very much, Dr. McLeod. As this is our first true textbook adoption before this board, if I may just a little background, provide a little background for you. As you may or may not be aware, when instructional materials are needed, the state sends out an inquiry asking publishers to provide materials to meet the needs of our students. Publishers then provide to the state the materials that are standards-based and meet the needs based on our state curriculum needs. Those materials are then put forth for public viewing. All members of the public are invited to peruse these publications and then to provide to the state an indication of which materials they think should be included in selection by teachers. So then that's where, after that point, it comes to the Office of Academics. The Instructional Materials Division of South Carolina Department of Education sets up the caravans. Now, back in the day, pre-COVID, the caravans came to the district and to the schools. But with the way things are now, the caravan is hosted in one central location. So for this biology textbook adoption, each of the science department chairs, who coincidentally themselves happen to be biology teachers, each of the biology department, each of the science department chairs from each of the 3 high schools joined me in Columbia for the caravan, where we engaged in a day-long session of viewing the publications, asking any questions we may have. We were also joined by one of the representatives from instructional technology to weigh in on the technology needs of the district as it applies to our publications. Our teachers then brought back the information from the caravan, and at our PD on February 20th, all of the biology teachers collaborated in one room and made their selections based on their choices. Now, we always provide the criteria for which we ask them to judge the materials. The materials must be standards-based. They must meet the needs based on how the curriculum was designed. For instance, there's a major shift in science, starting with the 2021 standards, in which teachers have to teach in all 3 dimensions. I'm not going to go into a great deal because then I'll be at the whiteboard and we'll be doing a science lesson. But there's a shift in how they have to teach science. Essentially, the days of sit and get and reading and learning science are over. The way forward is to engage in science, to apply science to the real world, and to use your knowledge of the concept to solve real world problems. So when we judge the instructional materials, we judge it against that expectation. Now, we also look at it through the teacher lens, because we have to make sure that our teachers have the capacity to facilitate the instruction the way that we need it facilitated for student growth. Now, what we're looking for is those wraparound services from the publisher. So again, the days of adopting a textbook only are over. Now you adopt programs. So you have services that come with that publication. So what we have especially looked for is the support service on the publication, on the publisher side, to see, to make sure that we are providing all levels of teachers. You know, we talk about meeting students where they are. We also have to meet teachers where they are. So from the first-year teacher to the teacher with 30 years experience, we want to make sure that they have support pieces from the publisher to help facilitate the instruction. And the choices that we have before you tonight meet all of those expectations for our students and our teachers.
So you should have with you, loaded in the board docs, the recommendations that were made by the teachers. And those include for biology 1, grades 9 through 12, Savas Learning Company. Biology 1 Honors 9 through 12, also Savas Learning Company. Biology 1 AP, grades 9 through 12 is Savas Learning, and Biology 2, 9 through 12 is Savas Learning.
Mr. Chair, I have just a quick question,
Question?
if you don't mind. Thank you. I understand, thank you for the briefing. I understand that, what I saw in this curriculum when I reviewed it, we had books that were 700, 800 pages long, multiple instances of that. Of course, I don't believe that one day any individual, unless they're experts in that field and that particular book and revision, I don't believe they're gonna see every bit of information, every change that the publisher's making. That said, my question is this: is there a process in which our science teachers, our local experts are as they're teaching, going throughout the year, they find problems, they find concepts that are alarming or out of scope of, I guess, what their expectation is? Is there a way of identifying that and reporting it so that we can go back and look? Because I don't believe that, us adopting this, we're talking, I don't know, I'm just throwing a number out there, 5,000 pages of curriculum in this one, I'm guessing, maybe more, maybe less. There's no way for any one of us to know that, fully what everything is in there. So I just want to make sure that we are administering education in the standards based, and not, there's nothing underhanded or outside of what we expect. Does that make sense without getting too political? Okay, is there a process in place for that, for reporting for our teachers and our students?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Zell, for the question. Our department chairs and our lead teachers attend monthly PLC meetings. It's Professional Learning Community. So the PLC for Science, which I lead, is the first Tuesday in every month. So on our meeting calendar, we have these prearranged, preset PLC meetings for every content area. So for me, that's quite a number.
Do you all reconcile that at the end of the year? I mean, what is there a and basically what I'm getting at is we're in a new time, we're in a new day. There's a lot of craziness out there, and I just want to make sure that, sitting in this position, that, and leveraging the brain power that we have in this room, that we're providing the best education to our kids without injecting unwittingly some craziness into their brains.
Right. Now, also, as we talk about changes to the educational landscape, another change is that the textbook is not the be-all, end-all of instruction. It is a resource. Now, the highly effective teachers use multiple resources, but you can be guaranteed that if there's an issue with the textbook, it is discussed and it is known as we meet. But ordinarily, we won't hear as much of an issue with the textbook as we'll hear maybe an issue with the technology associated with the program, because everything is now digital. Because our students will access every book that you saw for however many pages. That's not what's important to the student. What's important to the student is the digital access to that resource. So again, one of the wraparound services we look for is the responsiveness of that publisher to our needs in terms of instruction from the teacher and the needs of the student. So just in case someone was going to ask, someone may say, well, just based on my observation, it looks like you picked a lot of Savas titles there. Well, that publisher has a demonstrated track record of meeting our students' needs. So there's nothing more stressful for a teacher than to stand in a classroom and needing the students to all be in a certain place in the program and students not be able to connect through technology. So when situations like that happen, we know that Savas will respond in a very quick fashion because that's what they've always demonstrated in the past. So that is also a very important need, is that access to the programs for the students. And then there's also the fact that Savvis is is the first publisher that is working towards having its resources placed into the Learning Object Repository, which you'll hear more about going forward. But that's the way the state's moving with instructional materials, and they're leading the charge there. And one of the nice features of their programs for our teachers is that the Savvis programs live inside of Schoology, which is our learning management system for our teachers. So what does that mean? That means when you click on the link, you're not redirected to another link that takes them to the platform from the publisher. You get direct access. And that also means that the teachers are allowed, or they enjoy the benefits of that, because the grades go from that straight into the grade book. So it saves teachers a lot of time.
I appreciate that. I just, one last statement, and then I know Dr. Wright, and I saw you over there. I know you know the questions I'm going to ask because you know me too well. That said, is what I basically want to offer is, if there are major red flags that are coming up throughout the administration of this education, this curriculum, throughout the year, I would hope that you would feel confident to come back to this board and present those things to us, so we're not replicating problems. I mean, we all just won election here, and we hear it from our parents and our community that they have real concerns, and that we need to understand those concerns, hear them, and they need to be confident that we are providing the oversight of what's being taught to our children in a very responsible way. And I think adopting curriculum and then never talking about it again is not the way we do that. And so I think trusting the experts to come back and say this is something that we may find it may be contradictory, whatever it is, that you would feel confident to bring it through your chains to present it to the board so that we can make informed decisions. And
Absolutely.
so thank you for your time. I appreciate that. I will turn my
Mr.
microphone
Chair,
off.
may I just ask you a couple of questions? And I think you'll know why I'm asking this. For the record, Biology 1 is an end-of-course subject, isn't it?
Yes.
Biology 1 is going to be, all of those students are going to be given a test by the State Department of Education at the end, and it counts 20%, doesn't it?
That's correct.
Are you confident that this material is going to enable these kids to do well if everything else is in order?
Yes, ma'am. I am a former biology, anatomy, physiology, AP biology, and mathematics teacher, and I feel very good about what the teachers chose, very strongly.
And one other thing, and I know when I went in to look at it, you and I discussed this. Tell us about the materials they provide that will help the instructor.
Right, thank you for that question. I'd just like to point out also that my background is biology and chemistry. So I think we're well represented at the biology table. Well, one unique part of this program, and one of the determining factors as to why the teachers chose this biology program by and large through Savvis, is that this is the only publisher that provided us, along with the textbook and the programs, provided each student with an EOC workbook. So they will have an EOC workbook that they can use to prepare for the EOC. And this is the first time that we will have received this, and the first time that it will have been made available to our students. And that's very important. That test prep piece is essential as we look to grow that score.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yes.
My question, and thank you for addressing the digital content accessibility. My other question is around student needs. Not all students engage with technology in the same way. Will the students have access to hard copies of the textbook, if not to take home, because they are really large books. I did have an opportunity to see those in the classroom environment.
Absolutely, and they also provide support for differentiation for students, different learning styles and different learning needs. So if you've got a student that's accelerating, there's suggestions for that. If you have a student that needs more support, there's suggestions for that to be able to scaffold that student's instruction. So it's very strong. And keep in mind that South Carolina does not get textbooks that are just explicit for South Carolina. There are going to be other things. The textbook is not the curriculum. What we do is take that resource and develop our curriculum, which we review yearly, based on the resource that's available and the standard that has to be taught. So a lot of those pages will not be addressed because they're not part of our state standards.
And if I may continue, Mr. Chair, because something was just stated that takes me back to the teacher forum that we attended, in terms of what am I trying to think of? Where the teacher's guide that they use, the lesson plans.
Yes, ma'am.
So it sounds as if the teachers will be required to construct those lesson plans based on what they are given, and they're working with that. Do they tend to work in groups for that, or do
Yes,
they
ma'am.
work? Okay, because I think that that will help them based on the feedback that we received.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Dr. McCloud and Mr. Phillips, thank you so very, very much for the presentation.
We are seeking approval of this, is that correct?
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair, members of the board, recommendation is for the approval of textbook adoption for Biology 1 CP, Biology 1 Honors, Biology 1 AP, Biology 2 CP for the school year 23-24.
That's recommendation.
Yes, sir.
Motion? Motion to accept the,
Oh, wait a minute, she said. Okay. I don't see that listed under the action item, so that's why I was calling for the action here, but, okay. Okay,
Thank you.
all right. All right, Office of Finance, Mrs. Shatika Spearman, if you'll come forth at this time. General fund revenue and expenditures through February 28th, 2023.
Good evening, board members. Dr. Wright. I stand before you to bring to you the activity for general fund revenue and expenditures through February 28th, 2023. As of February 28th, we are at a 48.93% collection, which is pretty much on target, being that a lot of our revenue comes at the end of the year. We have a total of $71,766,318 in expenditures year to date. And we have received for the state aid to classroom, which is the new funding formula funds, and we've received about 48.69% of that. So that is about on average of what we've collected for the year as of February 28th, 2023. Also, the board also needs to know that we have began receiving funds for the federally impacted areas line, the budgeted for $400,000. We received over half of that, and that came through submitting an application each year to the federal government regarding our military families in the area. And so we will report collection on that in March, for the March report in April, I'm sorry. So we have begun to collect on that revenue line. as it relates to our expenditures as of February 28th, we are at $75,088,169 as far as expenditures, and that represents about 51.38% expenditure. As you will see, as we continue to collect our revenue, that expenditure will begin to be less than the revenue. Since the year started, that expenditure percentage has been greater than the percentage of revenue because of the timing of the revenue. If we were to stop all operations today, our expected fund balance would be $42,132,029 as a projection based on the activity through February 28th. Are there any questions regarding the general fund revenue and expenditure report?
I have a question. Under the expenditure, I believe it's line 311, instructional services.
Yes.
Just for clarification, the 514,690, that was budgeted originally for Kelly Services,
Correct.
but actually the amount spent thus far to date is $2 million.
That is correct, because we are utilizing them for the teaching services. And I believe iTutor is in there as well. So it will be like a trade-off from the regular salaries line to that operational line.
Correct.
You'll see a trade-off. But because of this approved budget, we have to maintain the numbers that were approved by the board for that year.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, just real quick, and this is a follow-up of Dr. Reagan's question. Will we see in the new budget our projections of utilizing Kelly Services, instructional services? Will we have likely have a larger budget item
For that line, yes. If
Okay, that's the expectation?
Yes, that
Okay.
is the expectation, to make it more realistic for what we're utilizing. Absolutely.
Question on that hypothetical you just presented at the end of your discussion on the fund balance. If the fund balance was 43 million, I think, is something I thought you said.
Oh, I said, first of all, the
Yeah.
auditors confirmed that our fund balance ending for last year is 41,641,000.
Right,
That is our beginning fund balance for this current year.
right.
So if we were to stop all operations right now based on the activity through February 28th, we would have increased our fund balance
Okay.
by about $490,000.
Okay,
That's what
okay.
I'm stating when I say that.
Okay. You did not say what I thought you said.
Okay.
Because I'd be curious to know, Ms. Spellman, if we continued operations with a decrease in income, how long would that fund balance last?
That is about, I would have to get you what the monthly expenditures are
Yeah.
and do that and see how many months we would last.
That would help me with some discussions I'm having with some folk about our finances, okay?
Absolutely.
Not long, Mr. Chairman. The answer is not long, Mr.
But I'll give you an exact amount of months on how long
Okay.
it will last.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I just got a question. It's really a follow-up. Do you have an update from the last meeting on the, line items for walkie-talkie, the school security, and the Chromebooks? Do you have an update on that, please?
Yes. I did submit.
It has been uploaded into the board request.
Yes. And if you need any more additional information, we can definitely provide that. The walkie-talkies were originally purchased with ESSER funding, so that is kind of like an extra reserve for any updated walkie-talkies and items to give to the schools as they need, as they break down, as they need to be replaced. So ESSER kind of gave us a buffer to have that and have that be used as the last line of defense if we have to. But I did make a response to all the 4 items that you requested, that you asked about on the last capital project report. are no other questions regarding the general fund, I'll go to the current capital projects report. This time around, I wanted to give you the capital project report by location as well as by the account. One of your questions, Mr. Colombo, was why did we have multiple line items of some of the same items? It's because of the year. We try to keep this and track it by the year, and the year and the semester or the fall or the spring bond money. So those first 3 digits tell me what the year is in our system, and we keep track of that. And we try to use, of course, the earliest funds first, and then we go through. So there are gonna be some lines, like the last one was 529, so we're gonna have most of that budget still here, still left. And so we'll just use those earlier funds first, and then go to the more current funds. But as it relates, I know that the prior board had their preference on how they like to see it, by location or by accounts or what have you. But I have presented to you by those 2 ways and where we are as far as the status on these different projects that were approved by the past board. And so we will be receiving funds for this spring. We receive them usually fall and spring. We will come to you, to this body, with a recommendation for the items that we believe the district needs to spend those funds on, and you will approve those, and then we will translate that into account numbers, and you will see those new numbers appear, and those amounts appear to this as well. Did anybody have any questions regarding the current capital projects as of February 28th, 2023?
Mr. Chair, just a quick question. Some of these items, when should we see, as I see metal detectors throughout the sheet. I see, it appears that we're applying, which is smart, we're applying dollars to the facilities that need more work. Totally get it. But I'm seeing metal detectors recur throughout the sheet. When should we start seeing those being purchased, implemented, and installed? And so is that an expectation we should see by the end of the next school year? So can we talk to that?
Yes, we have 14 metal detection systems that have been ordered. So things are on order, it's taking a little while to get here or set up or what have you, but that is some activity. It just hasn't translated into expenditures yet.
Okay, that was my next question. Okay, it says 0 is what prompted me to ask.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're hoping, wishful thinking, but we're hoping certainly to have them ready to go by 23, 24.
Right.
If they get in, because you gotta get them in, you gotta install them and all that.
And I'm guessing and I'm hoping that these dollars include all the installation and everything else, like there won't be a separate expenditure for that? Okay,
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
And what about the staffing for those metal detectors? Training, staffing?
Training, staffing, is that part of it? Mr. Myers can assist, thank you. With the details on that.
They don't operate themselves, so.
That is correct. Good evening. The training and the staffing is something that we'll be putting together once we've gotten all of the units in, and we're looking at that now because you're right, it takes more than just one person to do that. So we've accounted for that, and we'll be putting all of that together and just making sure that the training and everything else that we have is in place, and that everybody knows what their role is with that, because it's not just an easy process, and you just don't walk through it and just think that's it. There are a number of different pieces to that, and we'll keep you informed as to how we're moving along with that. So we won't forget that, and we'll make sure you're kept abreast of it.
Well, we received a very good tutorial on security, especially regarding the metal detectors when we were at the School Board Association convention. And that was one of the things, that a lot of variables involved. And so it's not just a matter of installing them and one person standing there, and so we got our eyes were opened. And so that's what prompted the question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mr. Myers, while you're there, Mr. Chair,
Thank you, kindly.
thank you. Have some of the schools already started to put facades up or something in place for some of the security
For metal detector?
For the metal detectors?
Not yet.
Okay,
No,
because
not
I was
yet.
at one of the schools and I saw something. I'm like, oh, maybe
No,
that's
what
a
you're-
metal detector.
what
Two different things, Ms. Calza Johnson. We have some facades that have gone up to answer that question, just not metal detectors.
Okay, all right.
Okay. Ms. Plummer? Thank you again for your report. Yes, ma'am, I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Trustees, at this time we have two presentations titled 6.6, 6.7, coming from the Office of Operations. Mr. Samuel Myers, Executive Director of Office of Operations, will come forth. The first item will be introducing our District Emergency Management Safety Coordinator, Mr. Toshiro Nabinet. And then we'll have a update on the Code of Conduct revisions and draft presentation. Gentlemen.
Well, good evening again. Several months ago, we started our process for looking for a safety person, and we did all of the various things we needed to find to start that process, and we did. We interviewed several candidates, and we came up with a young man who's very versed in safety and committed to making sure things are safe and wanting to come forward. And at this time, I'm going to allow Mr. Nabinet to introduce himself and just tell you a little bit about himself. And we'll go from there.
Good evening, everyone. I've been sitting in the back for a couple of months, and now I'm up front here. But my name is Toshiro Nabinet. My background is in corrections, juvenile corrections, as well as adult corrections. And I also have, about to tell my age, about 25 years of military experience as a operations NCO. I'm actually in the South Carolina National Guard, and I have the rank of Master Sergeant. So I guess I would open it up for any questions that you all have for me.
Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I would like to first say thank you for your service. You have a couple of retired Master Sergeants in this room right now, sitting across from you. And so I very much appreciate that. And so, you know, I just want you to know, this isn't really a question, more of a statement, just the good people of Area 8 in Sumter County and across this district is extremely interested in you and what you do to help us get these discipline, these issues in control. And so I for one am very excited to work with you, and I think that allow us to work with the district and your team to give you reasonably what you need to get that in place for us. So I just want to say thank you. It's a large task ahead of you, but I think we can do it.
Thanks, sir.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Have you done, I'm just double checking, what are your visions and your goals for the security of the Sumter School District?
I've been on board for about 2.5 months now. I had the opportunity to go to all the schools. I haven't made a whole lot of friends because I'm going inside the schools, seeing some things that normally they're not seeing because they're at the school every day. So I'm a fresh set of eyes. I've been doing some safety evaluations at the schools and meeting with the principals and assistant principals and trying to work out some things that I'm seeing. So it's an ongoing process. It's a daily process, but we're going to get there.
Do you have a physical security background?
I do.
Okay. Are you in security forces?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So,
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, if I might, there are some specifics of the work that Mr. Nabinet is doing that we would rather not discuss in this forum. I just want to be clear about that.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Correct, I just was.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be clear.
No, I know, that's, yeah, I know. The biggest thing is, are you looking at doing a monthly report to bring to us every single month to tell us what, and it could be an executive, I understand, some of that stuff will have to be in executive session. What's the plan, a way ahead to provide us a monthly update?
I definitely can.
Well, the information that he's going to put forward will come to me. I'll share it with the executive team, Dr. Wright, and we'll share that by way of Dr. Wright with the board. So there will be a report that's going to be coming forward.
Okay. And have you spoken to law enforcement, Sumter County Sheriffs and Sumter Police Department?
We have a meeting scheduled soon with all of them. I've met all of them individually at different sites, but we're gonna come together and have a collective meeting real soon.
Okay. And are you looking, the biggest thing is, I just want to make sure that there is a team effort with the Sumter Sheriff's Department and Sumter Police Department, and to make sure that we have knowledge, basically making sure that we understand what is going on in schools, from everything from a criminal threat to gang violence and all that type of stuff, so.
All of the various pieces that you just mentioned are a part of what we're doing. We won't leave any stones unturned, because it'll be a waste of time, and we're not going to waste anyone's time. And we're going to make sure that all of that is in place. So you'll be seeing that very, very soon.
All right. Any other questions? I hope not. Okay, we'll get a more detailed report in a session very soon, okay? I'd ask that we just be patient at the moment. I know we're all anxious about this whole issue of security. Ms. Inhabitant, many of us have been told that you're doing a good job. We're hearing from the schools that your presence is there. And so we're anxious to get a report when it's the right time, okay? All right, okay. That's it. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Trustees, at this time we are going to proceed to item 6.7. I want to be clear that the information that is being presented tonight is a working document that is the result of many meetings that have been held in regards to the updating and the implementation of the Code of Conduct for the 23-24 school year. The three people sitting before you, our Chief of Schools, Dr. Shirley Gamble, our Executive Director of Operations, Mr. Samuel Myers, and our Executive Director of Communication and Community Engagement, Ms. Shelley Galloway. Did I get that right that time, almost?
Yes, sir.
I thought you
Okay.
said communion.
No, not quite, Reverend. These three individuals have taken the lead on the work of Code of Conduct after listening to the superintendent rant. Come up with expectations moving forward with the new process. They will talk to you about how and where and with whom they have vetted this process. We understand that this work is not a product that will be finished even when it's finished. The expectation moving forward for codes of conduct is that they are reviewed each year around this time to see their validity and whether or not they need to be updated and so forth and so on. So I want us to understand that this is our best effort at this point to present something that we will use as a foundation of sorts upon which to build our disciplinary process moving forward. And trust me, it is much more palatable than anything that we have been using for the past few years. There you go. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Gamble and Mr. Myers and Ms. Galloway.
Good evening, Chairman Canty, Vice Chairwoman Disney, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Wright. It is a pleasure to provide an update on the Code of Conduct revision process that has occurred since Monday, February the 27th. As you are aware, one of Dr. Wright's goals is to provide a safe, respectful, and welcoming learning environment that fosters a climate of support and respect by reducing student behaviors that impede academic success and student safety. And this goal includes the evaluation of safety procedures in the disciplinary process to determine revisions to the board policy JI-CDA Code of Conduct for the 2023-2024 school year. The information included in board docs, like Dr. Wright said, is just a draft, but I would like to commend the work of our Code of Conduct Committee and also our school administrators who have reviewed this process. And we look forward and value any feedback that you may have on the process, on the revisions. The committee continued to work diligently to provide the draft of recommendations that you've received last week. To expedite the process, district-level facilitators and the committee compiled recommendations from 6 subcommittees, and in the reports that you have, that will be printed in black. It drafted consistent language throughout the document. That information you will see printed in blue, with the blue font. We reviewed the progression of offenses to assure that elementary and middle school administrative actions were not stricter than the high school administrative actions.
And good evening to our trustees. Also, the elementary students, we felt we certainly need to look at their administrative actions, because certainly in their formative years, they need more coaching. So therefore, we tried to have more leniency with them, but yet still made them accountable as well for their actions. Also, I want to make sure that you're clear that although the district league team did make suggestions that we said were in blue, but when we met as a committee, we made sure that our committee members recognized that we did not have a bigger voice than they had with the suggestions for the administrative actions. So when we met with the committee for the final time, they were told that they could edit anything that we had provided. And there was a section in which our committee members did not get an opportunity to address, because this takes a lot of time to discuss the administrative actions. So we tried to help them by making suggestions. So on the March 9th meeting that we held with our committee, the facilitators again made sure that the autonomy did not rest solely with us. It was with a committee. And on March the 20th, we met with principals. Principals reviewed the document as well, and they made recommendations and revisions as well, and that is indicated by the red font that you see in the document. So we will yield at this time and answer any questions that you have regarding the product that we have thus far. I certainly welcome your feedback.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to beat you to it this time. May I ask a couple of questions?
Okay.
Thank you. I think we are well on the way. I am so pleased that I believe we're going to have a very different look in our school classrooms next year. There are a couple of things that puzzle me. I noticed when I got to the middle school and high school, it referred to an officer. Will we not have a board, a hearing board, rather than a hearing officer? I don't hear the S on the officer. I would think with this many children, we're going to need a board. Has that been considered?
There's been some conversation.
I would like to see more conversations, yeah.
We will work through Dr. Wright to see how we could put that together if we see that need.
Right. I would appreciate that, because I think they're retired people. I think there are ways to do that. Another question. What is the highlighted material when you get to forgery? I think several times it's highlighted. What does that mean?
There was conversation about it, in which we were still reviewing. There were some that believe that that is needed, and for instance, in the elementary level, many of our committee members didn't think forgery was really needed, but yet we had a few that said, yes, it does happen even in elementary school. So that is why you see some of them highlighted, because there still needs to be some discussion whether we are going to keep forgery at each level, or do we need to actually eliminate it from maybe, one area.
Okay. What about horseplay? That was another one that I found that there was discrepancy on. Is this real, or is it incorporated in other acts?
It can be based on the action, but we still feel that there probably needs to be horseplay, because sometimes it's not as violent as some acts with horseplay. So we do believe that there still is a need to have a horseplay behavior code at each level.
As long as it's documented properly. Another question. I noticed in the lower levels, for example, when the offenses, there's discretion, maybe they get 1 to 2 days, and it's very tight. 1 to 2 days, 2 to 3 days, very tight. But then when we got to high school, I know for some offenses, even on the second and third, on the second level, that window became very wide. You might have, the principal might have 1 to 5 days. That bothered me. I felt like if we're going to keep it tight for elementary, then I'm just going to pick on Sumter High School for a minute. If that principal is only going, for that offense, only going to give them 1 day, they go to Crestwood and they're going to get 5 days for the same offense. I find that a little bit too much principal discretion. But anyway, I'll let y'all look at that, but I do think that needs to be tightened. Okay, got that. All right.
Madam Vice Chair, in the majority of cases where you might see a policy written that says 1 to 5 days, it is historic that high schools will not issue 1-day suspensions.
But could we just
But that's kind of the way it has to be written because of consistency with the state. Is that right, y'all? Did I get that right? Go ahead.
We also have to give that wide expanse, because we have to keep in mind we've got special education students in there.
Right.
And, they have X number of days that we have to account for.
Okay.
And so it's not just giving principals that much of an expanse. We have to keep all of that in consideration. So the committee principals and the committee met, and they understood that, and they felt they could use that window to their advantage.
Okay, I understand that. I do think that when a student is reading that and signing that he understands the rules, that they don't think they're just going to get 1 day. All right, I understand what you're saying. Another thing, I think at level 2, in elementary school, you're giving most of these kids 4 chances. I understand that. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm thinking when we get to high school, those kids have been in school for 10, 11, 12 years. They don't need 4 chances. They don't need to have a warning and then told 1 time, 2 times, 3 times. That's too much. Those kids, they know exactly what the rules are. I mean, give them 2, not 4. What?
Certainly, we'll make your recommendations, but we did decrease it significantly from where we had before. And our current code of conduct, sometimes they were given 7 chances before. Some severe actions were taken, so we did decrease it, but certainly we can take it back to the committee.
I appreciate it. I'm not quite finished, just one more, and then one of the things that bothers me a little bit, I don't see the distinguishing between an assault and a battery, and to me, that's really important. You have something called a kick and a hit or something like that. I can tell you on day, I can tell you, if you and I are in the same classroom, I can tell you today, I'm gonna hit you tomorrow. Now, that's an assault. And then tomorrow, I go, not only do I hit you, but I knock your head against the wall. Now, to me, that is very different, and it needs to, I may have to go to a neurologist because you hit my head. I'd like to see that, maybe bump that up to a level 3. I hear that I see you talking.
It is in category 3. It's
Okay.
a simple assault. That's in
Okay.
category 3.
Even at the elementary, they're not allowed to hit each other 4 times.
And even at that level, they can also be charged with a category
Okay.
3 as well.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, the category 3 is actually K-12.
Okay. All right.
Madam Vice Chair, one more point on what you said earlier. For lack of a better way of putting it, the previous disciplinary code was so vague. We also have to be careful not to create, I don't know, sticker shock. So this policy, when we have 4 chances, as you described it, it's not that we're trying to be lenient at all. We're trying to bridge the gap from a system that gave somebody 7 chances to maybe where we would be 2 to 3 years from now. Because if you go from 7 to 2, you're actually going to create more of a problem than you do by bridging the gap. The other thing, to your hearing question earlier, so in the Sumter School District, we have historically granted hearings to everyone who is recommended for a transition of school. So if I am assigned to the alternative school, historically I have always been granted a hearing, which ends up we're doing hundreds of hearings per year. That is not something that is required. If the parents agree, if the child and the parents agree that a alternative school assignment or placement is sufficient, a hearing is not necessary. So actually, for next year, we may see the numbers stay relatively the same, but over time, we actually expect the hearing numbers to decrease. Therefore, we would need 3, 4, 5 people on a hearing committee, because in most districts our size, I would venture to say districts may have 50 or 60 hearings a year, not several hundred. So that process is all in the process of being worked. So that's why I've been very careful about saying this work that these folks have done and these committees that have been formed and this code of conduct that we're going to roll out for 23, 24 is not a be-all, end-all. It is simply a document that begins to bridge the gap to get to where we need to be. I want everybody to be careful about that, because the worst thing you can do is come in and implement a code of conduct that is such a paradigm shift till it creates other kinds of problems. So we're trying to bridge the gap with that. So I just wanted to clarify those things so everybody understands. Yes, ma'am.
So I got a question. So after the 4th offense, they're going to a hearing after the 4th offense? On the 4th offense, right? Did we do a study of how many high schools of kids as of right now have 4 offense? Because to be honest with you, the generation has changed. And when I say the generation have changed, that it may be things that when we were coming along that the teachers didn't, pretty much write us up for, but versus now, they're getting written up for. So you're saying 4 offense. That's, to me, it's going to increase our hearings. So you got four times and you're done. The generation has changed. So I think before we push this, we want to go to different schools and see how many kids are getting 4 write-ups. Because that's what you're going to be looking at before we push this. That's just my opinion.
Mr. Chair, I just have a couple questions.
All right.
So, can you tell me what the 6 subcommittees are that make up this full committee? Just topically, you said 6 committees fed into this full committee, correct? What are they? I mean, I don't need all of them, just kind of just topical. Just kind of know just to tell me what angle and I guess what the focus areas are.
Actually, what was meant by that statement, for instance, in category 1, there are 3 levels.
Okay.
And in 3 levels, there were 3
Understood.
subcommittees in category 1.
Okay, so it was more of assignment rather than a
Correct.
focus group. Okay, all
Correct.
right, all right. What's that? Does it add, what we're looking at, are we adding or removing, I guess, school level administration discretion? I know that our chairwoman mentioned discretion. We have a large, a lot of schools, we have a lot of principals, we have a lot of folks who look at things a lot of different ways. And so I find that discretion, ambiguity in discretion is oftentimes creates more problems than it helps, right? And so, of course, we want to give the experts at their level the ability to make decisions at their level. That said, though, is what you have School A, for example, who's harsh on the letter of the law, and you have School B who is not, for whatever reasons. I find that problematic. So I always want to make sure that we are applying the right level of discretion at the right level, authorizing it rather. And then, do we have anything, and I'm not sure if it's this forum so much, or if it's more of a policy, but are there any fail-safes or any evaluation measures for our school level administration to ensure that they are in fact enforcing our standards and not being far too lenient, giving too many chances, being too vague in application, things like that. And so the last thing I'll ask is, I believe a couple meetings ago we were told that 30%, approximately 30% of our students are in special needs categories. Is that accurate? Does that sound about right? It was a pretty substantial number. All right, so just assume it's a large number. That being said, if we are, and you mentioned, ma'am, I think it was you that mentioned that, there are certain categories that, certain requirements for reporting for special needs students. I understand that. But I just want to make sure, and it goes back to the first part of my statement, is that we're not taking that requirement for special needs and applying it to the whole body, because there are clearly differences in, understanding development, things like that. So I just want to make sure that the body of our students are being held to a very real, clear, consistent standard where they can expect if certain infraction of behavior is going to be met with a certain consequence. Does that make sense? That was a lot.
I can address a portion of that. When we met with the principals, one thing that we really wanted to ensure is the consistency across the board. And so we asked them, is this code of conduct something that you believe in? Is it something that you can enforce? There are going to be times where it's age appropriate, like for instance with Oakland Primary, where you have the little ones opposed to an upper level elementary student. But we did, when we were getting feedback from elementary, middle, and high, and even with our administrators within our code of conduct committee, we asked them specifically every single time they gave input at each level, is this something that you can enforce? This is something that you can stand behind and believe in? And they said yes. And so we do believe in being consistent across the board.
Excellent. And so I guess this is my last statement, is I do agree that I think that we need more oversight, and I think Ms. English hit it. I think having hearings, I think, needs to be more, to put that on one person's shoulders, I just think is a lot. And I think that, when you put that kind of single point of failure, is what we call it in the military, I think that we oftentimes can, it's always good to have another set of eyes on the problem, is what I'm getting at. So I think having a hearing board or committee would rather be would provide more fairness to the system, more oversight. And then, I think I've asked enough questions, so I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Chair, just got a couple.
Question.
A couple of them. One, way better a lot, great job. We're getting, the days of 5, 6, 7 chances are over and done with, and thank you, because that just was ridiculous. The one, couple of just, minor critiques that I seen, first, it was more on the level ones. Actually, it's the majority of it's level 1. Some of them had, a lot of them had like warnings. Well, I'm a guy that was a warning with action. So are we looking at, how about a warning with after-school detention? Because that is really a warning, after-school detention, because you give them the opportunity to understand, okay, you're taking time away from me. Well, it's not really time, it's really education, you can make it educational, and I'm all for it. Or like, for example, littering. At lunchtime, kids see you around picking up littering. You can teach them about conservation and all that type of stuff, and make it more educational for them about what's will biodegrade and all that type of stuff. So it's not a punishment; it's actually teaching opportunity. So that's my suggestion: is to have a warning with action. Is after school detention. I'd like to hear your opinion on that. And then some of these committees, are we asking the bus drivers and the cafeteria workers what they think on some of the, get their opinion on some of that stuff too?
We have received input at different times from bus drivers because they talk about some of the things that are happening on the buses, as well as food service workers.
Mhm.
We have listened to them, and we've acted on some things that they've shared with us. But I must digress for a moment and go back to something that you indicated about utilizing, picking up paper and different kinds of things like that. We cannot put anything on a student that's going to be punitive or
Mhm.
anything that's classified as corporal punishment. We have to use it as a learning tool,
Mhm.
but that in itself will categorize itself as corporal punishment, and we cannot gear into that. We may disagree with
Mhm.
that, but I must say that we have to make sure that we're going to stay firm with that. There may be some other way to do that,
Mhm.
and I'll yield at that point, but I'll continue
Mhm.
to hold that stance.
But at least after-school detention is not, and that's actually legal by the state of South Carolina, because as long as you give a parent time to say, hey, it's on a Tuesday, you're allowed to do that. So by state law, you're allowed to do that type of stuff.
Mhm.
So that's something that you can actually implement.
Yeah.
So the last thing is there a reason why, because it is a state law, the Youth Access to Tobacco and Prevention Act, the SROs are allowed to cite, because I hear all the time students that can't use the bathrooms because there's smoking going on and all that type of stuff. They're allowed to cite $25 for every single offense. So is that what, can we put that in the code of conduct?
I think if you were to find that and share that with us,
Mhm.
we'll consider it.
Oh, I got it right here.
But we have to make sure that our SROs are not taking the lead on addressing issues like that. It's an administrative piece that administrators address that wholeheartedly. So if that's something that that's worthy of consideration, then we'll take a look at it just like all of the other things.
Okay.
Mr.
Thank-
Palumbo, I'd also like to touch on the after-school detention. We asked the committee, we also talked to administrators about that. So many of our students rely on bus transportation to get home, that if they had after-school detention, that might pose a problem. And also staffing for after-school detention, because there was talk about after-school detention or Saturday as well, but it also comes down to staffing and then the ability for students to actually get there and get home.
Okay, and I understand that. I mean, we've had after-school detentions for decades now, and I was single parent. I walk my butt home. And it's up to the parents, it forces the parents to become parents and start enforcing the standards on that side. So you start to kind of put the line up, draw the line in the sand, and the parents will start, it's like, I don't want to pick you up. So you better not get in trouble. So that's my whole point is, that's on them as a parent, and the parent needs to start, you know, actually being a parent and don't get in trouble. That's simple as that. Don't have to get in trouble.
So noted. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
I noticed that in the code of conduct, some things are spelled out under the first category for offenses as being very specific, and certain other things are somewhat vague. And I guess I would ask that we go back and look at those that could be considered vague, and at least have some examples, if not spelled out here somewhere, so that students, teachers, and parents understand what we're talking about. I know what inappropriate behavior is, but a parent may not consider that to be inappropriate behavior and want to challenge us on it. The same thing for inappropriate affection or inappropriate language or obscene gestures. And I even saw one in here where it's where you can be seen. Do we have cameras in our schools? Because we may be able to go back and see something on a camera that would need to be addressed. So I think that we have to be very intentional as we look at these, and make certain that we have at least examples of what we're talking about, especially as it relates to things that we have seen in the past. So we have a foundation somewhere from which we can start. And also, I know Mr. Colombo mentioned fines. I think, and I know you said we could consider that. I think we have to be very careful with something like that, and I would just ask that we do that with discernment as well. I think most of our students are getting free lunch. If I don't know that it's most, I may be exaggerating on that, but if we're one of those districts where we do provide free lunch, we have to be very careful about assessing in any such way.
Mr. Chair, if I might follow up on one of the items that was just discussed, we will certainly take care to go back and look at detailing some of the code violations. But keep this in mind, some of the flexibility in the way that things are because of the, I'll say this politely, the creativity of students. So you gotta have flexibility in the, you know, you gotta say inappropriate sometimes, because that's gonna cover a myriad of things that kids could creatively do. You know, if you just say, you know, kissing behind the bleachers is illegal and here's the punishment, then they can say I was kissing, but I was outside by the flagpole. So that's kind of, you know, that's kind of why some of that is left somewhat ambiguous. We'll go back and look and make sure that it's explicit enough to get what we need, but I just wanted us to understand why, because I used to ask those same questions, but over time I've understood that you have to leave a little bit of flexibility for the creativeness of incidents that occur. I'll just say it that way. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I do agree with that
Yes, ma'am.
100%.
Yes, ma'am.
But
Yes, ma'am.
I only mentioned that perhaps we should look at some
Absolutely.
examples that we have something we could fall back on.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we'll go back and review that as well.
Dr. Wright, you can actually just put a glossary. Why don't you just put a glossary and put the definition of what it in the code of conduct? It can be something.
I would like to say that some of the ones that you saw, like inappropriate affection, those are state codes that we just pulled straight from the state codes, and that's all that they would share with that. So, and there are several others like that are state codes.
Thanks for clarifying, because that probably delineates between specific versus more vague. Thank you.
And also, the definitions are included in the code of conduct. They, in the previous code of conduct, they were not included,
Right.
so we did add it to this one, and the community was very appreciative of that as well.
Mr. Chair, if I might interject, and also hopefully this may put a period on this conversation. This is some very good work, and it makes great strides to improve on what we've been operating on. Something that I've heard several times during the last 20 minutes or so that we've been discussing this, that I want to make sure that we understand. I know that we have to stay within state guidelines and the state law, and we always want to be cognizant of that, and I know that you check all of those things, and I appreciate that. However, when you have a code of conduct, and when you have rules, and you have consequences, consequences are by nature punitive, and they have to be. And there have been a few expressions of, well, we have to be careful that we don't do that. Part of the deterrent of the behavior is knowing that if I do this, this is going to happen, and oh, I cannot let that happen. I cannot pay that price, whether it's monetary, time, whatever it is. And so we have to make sure that we actually have the deterrent in place. And I understand with a lot of our students, and this is a conversation I've had with other board members, this is school. And this is where they're taught some of their behaviors because they're not getting it at home. And so part of this is part of the learning process. So while we do not want to be dictatorial and abusive, of course, and we would stay within the law, we also want to teach the good behaviors, and the deterrent is part of that, I think. So, and I feel like y'all have kept that in mind on most of this. Some of it I agree as far as going a little further on some things, reeling in so many chances, maybe being more specific with things. But overall, I think we need to remember that we're trying to teach and create a safe environment. And so I thank y'all for considering all of those things. I realize it's a difficult job. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion, or is that the period? Okay. All right, thank you for this update. Appreciate you guys and the hard work you're doing.
Mr. Chair, while they're going back, I just want to reiterate that I am appreciative of members of my executive team as well as all that have been involved in this, getting us to this point. I do think that there's been some amazing work done to try to get us closer to where we need to be.
Okay. One second. Okay, all right. We're down to item 7, action required. 7.1. Actions related to executive session. Mr. Superintendent?
So recommendation is, first recommendation is for student A to attend school out of zone for school year 23-24.
Is there a motion on that?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I move that we allow, do I name the student or student A? Student A to attend school out of zone for the 23-24 school year.
Is the motion supported?
Mr. Chair, I second
All
that
right,
motion.
Thank you. All right. we'll vote our convictions. All right. The vote is a unanimous one.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recommend that student B be allowed to attend the Sumter School District for the 23-24 school year.
Mr. Chairman, I make the motion to allow student B attendance with the Sumter School District during the school year 23-24.
Is the motion supported?
Second.
All right, the motion is supported. We'll move to the vote. All right, the vote carries, it's unanimous. Okay.
Mr. Chair, the Sumter School District Board of Trustees is interested in obtaining a motion to hear a disciplinary hearing appeal for student C.
Mr. Chair, I move to make a motion to have the discipline hearing for student C.
I second.
The motion is made and supported. You may proceed to the vote. All right. The vote carries. It's unanimous.
Mr. Chair, I motion to refer all financial reports to the Finance Committee for review and allow the committee to bring all information and recommendations back to the board.
Mr. Chair, I second that motion.
The motion is supported. We will go to the vote. Motion passes unanimously. Is there another?
Yes, sir, one more.
I'm sorry.
You got one more, sir.
Okay.
All right. The recommendation is for the adoption of Biology 1 CP,
Oh, yes.
Biology 1 Honors, Biology 1 AP, Biology 2 CP textbooks for the school year 23-24.
Yes. Motion?
Mr. Chair, I move, make a motion to approve the adoption of Biology 1 CP, Biology 1 Honors, Biology 1 AP, Biology 2 CP for school year 23-24.
Second.
Okay. Supported. We'll proceed to the vote. All right, it carries, it's unanimous. All right. Personnel report.
Mr. Chair, members of the Board of Trustees, the recommendation is for the approval of the monthly personnel report as presented.
Motion.
Motion that the board approves the personnel report as presented for February 27, 2023.
March.
Excuse me, March 27th,
That's all right.
2023.
That's all right, okay.
Thank you.
I second that motion.
Motion is supported. We'll proceed to the vote. Hello, all right, the motion carries unanimously. Very good. All right. Item 8.1, the approval of the consent agenda. Is there any, are we in agreement with the consent agenda? Is there any opposition? Any opposition at all? Opposition once, twice, three times. All right, the consent agenda is approved. And at 9:45, we adjourn. Have a good night.
Are you?